Hello and welcome to the video. This is a case study and overview of the newly created Cache Protection Agency WordPress mobile website. Formerly it looked like this, and it did have some mobile functionality owing to the Wizzy app plugin in the dashboard, but it doesn't really give a total or complete mobile experience. It looks okay on some mobile devices, but it's very limited, and you don't really get this landing page. You get something else altogether. Anyway, I've done away with that, and what I've created is a much faster, cleaner, better website, and it loads faster owing to the fact that I've created a lot of the graphics as SVG, that's vector graphics, so that they load faster. They've got a smaller file size as well. So I think you'll agree on balance that this website is much better looking, and you'll soon find out much better functioning than this website. There's not a whole lot of difference in terms of the design on the front end. That's because the Cache Protection Agency wished to preserve the branding. They're not going for a rebrand. So it was really a case of redeveloping more than anything. Let's start by talking about the mobile viewports. A viewport is basically the device width. So if I open up the CSS style sheet and scroll to the top, you'll see that we've got a section here called media queries, and we've got things like max width 1159, max width 1023, and so on. I'll explain what those are. Okay, so first of all, we're in the desktop view. This is what you would see if you're logged onto a desktop PC or even a laptop. If I collapse the window width, this takes us to the first viewport, which is 1159 pixels in width, and that would be comparable to, say, an iPad in landscape view. And if I just open the CSS style sheet again, we'll see here we've got max width 1159. I'll tell you what we'll do, we'll take a quick peek at the code. So here's the first media query. So everything within that has basically meant that this layout has been repurposed for a smaller device width. So certain things are the same, but you can see, for example, that the phone number resizes. A few other things are resized as well. So if we go for the next device width, this is the 1023 pixel width, which was also in the style sheet, and this is comparable to an iPad in portrait mode. Other devices are available, but that's a good point of reference, I think, for most people. If I go to the next size down, the next viewport, you're looking at a 767 pixel width viewport, and that is comparable to an iPhone in landscape view. And if I go down to the last one, this is the final device width. This is 480 pixels. That viewport is comparable to an iPhone in portrait view, and you can see that everything is collapsed into a vertical column. You see these call to action buttons, they've all now gone vertical, whereas if we go back up one or two viewports, you can see that they're floating left, which means they're stacked next to one another. The other thing I want to point out is the slider. We've got something called a Genesis slider, because this website is built on the Genesis framework. So if we take a look in the dashboard, Genesis slider, it's using these post IDs to display the corresponding images. These images are, if I click this one for example, this takes us to a page where if I click the edit button and go into the post editor, the featured image that we've used, that's what the slider is using. And this post ID is if I hover over the edit button and look to the bottom left, that's post ID 26, and you can see post ID 26 there. So that is how the slider is set up. I've also cropped those featured images. Let me just explain what I mean by that. When you upload an image to WordPress, for example this one, banner credit checks, WordPress automatically creates multiple thumbnails. So I've cropped them so that if you ever post a page to social media will, like Twitter or Facebook, it will often grab one of these additional thumbnails. It won't necessarily display this image. So that's banner credit checks. And if I find one of the thumbnails, banner credit checks, here we go. Can you see? So what I did was, when I added the original featured image, it created all these thumbnails, but some of them weren't very well cropped. That one, for example, that one probably needs to be redone, but the rest I was able to recrop so that you could actually read the content in a meaningful way. So that's always worth doing with a WordPress website. Also, I've used SVG logos instead of what was there before. I think it was yes, can you see, look, it's a GIF. A GIF is okay, but the reason I went for an SVG instead is because SVG is, one, it's better quality, it's sharper because it's a vector image, and two, you can use CSS to resize it for the different viewports. So let me show you an example of some SVGs, vector graphics. You see, this is vector graphics, and this can be expanded infinitely without any loss of quality. Conversely, you can go quite small with it and it tends to retain its quality, whereas a GIF is a raster image. You can't really do that. For example, I mean, if we tried to resize this, which is I think this is a GIF as well, when you resize it, you're just stretching the pixels and it's no good, as you can see. So the great thing with this is that when it's in different viewports, if you want, you can have it display at different sizes without losing any quality. I did the same with these call to action buttons as well. So when we go into the 480 pixel viewport, I think these get bigger or slightly bigger. On the sidebar also here where it says talk to us, when I go into a different viewport, can you see, look, the different size? Now, obviously that's too big, I'm exaggerating to make a point, but let's put it down to a more realistic size. You can use CSS to resize those logos. So for different viewports, all you're having to do is call the SVG once in the style sheet and then resize it multiple times. Whereas before, I've seen mobile sites where they've got 3 or 4 different versions of a GIF. So they'll have like a GIF, a small GIF, a medium-sized GIF, and then a very large GIF. So you're calling 3 images when you don't really need to do that. You can just call the one SVG and resize that. It's worth doing things like this because it is a mobile site. It needs to be fast. It needs to be light on its feet. It's all about the experience for the user. The other thing is, I got rid of the .html suffix. Now if I click one of these pages, services for example, we've got services.html, and I thought that was kind of odd. You're adding unnecessary friction to the experience of a user perhaps typing in the URL of the page. Ideally you want to get rid of that and have it naked. So that's what I've done with the new site. I've made it naked. So now if someone was to go .html like this, what it does is it redirects to services. So that means that any backlinks that you've currently got pointing to the .html suffix versions of these pages, those links will not be broken, because there might be people out there that have linked to these pages. You might have linked to a blog post or a page on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, So you want to make sure those links aren't broken. And I did that in htaccess using a pretty simple 301 redirect command. Let's take a look very briefly. There it is. It's a rewrite rule. So if .html appears in the URL, basically it just ignores it and forwards on using a 301 redirect. So that htaccess file is invaluable because you don't want to break your links if you can help it. You want to preserve any legacy backlinks that you've got. Now, in addition to the aesthetics on the front end and some of the technical things that I've pointed out, I've took the liberty of making general improvements to the back end by discarding some of the plugins. Now what you're looking at presently is the current website setup, and there's a lot of plugins in here that are kind of unnecessary, and I've had to get rid of some of them, but I've kept the all-in-one SEO pack, for example, because you don't want to lose your SEO data on posts and pages. But I've pruned a lot of the plugins and stuck only to ones that I trust, that I've had a lot of experience with. On the other hand, I didn't want to throw out too many of them because I can see that you've built the website around certain plugins. For example, you've got the Google Analyticator plugin, that one there. So I've kept that because I imagine you're comfortable using that. Hello Dolly, you can get rid of that. In fact, that's been known, that's been linked to viruses and all sorts of bad stuff that you don't want on in your WordPress website. I don't know why people have the Hello Dolly plugin at all. It serves no useful function. I've got rid of MailChimp because you're going to be using Infusionsoft. I'm going to get rid of the share buttons because they're not really serving any useful function. I can see that you've got the WordPress print this section. Instead of that, you could use something like, there's a free plugin, a very good plugin for printing pages. It renders them as a PDF and prints them out. I've also added iTheme Security, which was formerly known as Better WP Security. That had a very good reputation, and iThemes have taken over that plugin, and it's very good. There's also WordFence, which I've not activated yet because this is an offline website. We're not online yet. But WordFence lets you know when a plugin needs to be updated. So there's a lot of out-of-date plugins here, for example, and if you did have WordFence running, it would email you every time to let you know that there's a new version available of whatever the plugin is. Contact Form 7 has recently undergone some changes with validation. That means that certain emails won't send. So I've updated Contact Form 7 in the version that I'm working on, and I've recoded a little bit of the contact form. I'll show you that and compare it side by side. This is to do with something called spoofing. It's like it's a spam trap that a lot of hosts have rolled out. Look, it's finding all these configuration errors, and it's to do with the when it loads. I'll show you. What you need to do is you need to copy this and basically just put that in there like that, and then say save, and that should validate it, which means if a customer sends an email, it will send and it will come through. Compare this to this one, which is the one I've created. I've put in contact form : your subject, so you'll know that it's come from a contact form. So I just made a few tweaks and changes really, and it's much better, it's much tidier, much more secure. And what I'm proposing to also do is add Cloudflare. don't know if you've heard of Cloudflare. It's a reverse proxy and caching service. It's free, and it's like an intermediary service that sits between your web host and the big bad internet. It's kind of like a shield, and it's free. It's very good. It definitely improves the performance of websites. I've used it on practically every website I've ever created. So this is something you'll have to do once the website is online. So once we've moved it from the local host to your actual host, we can add Cloudflare. You know what browser caching is, don't you? You know, like if you don't clear your history and you visit a website, it loads faster because you've already got the files on your computer. Cloudflare works similar in principle, so it will cache your website and deliver it faster to users using what you call mirrors. Mirrors are kind of closer to where you are based in the world. So there might be a London mirror, there might be a Paris mirror. Wherever you are in the world, you're grabbing the website data from a closer mirror. So that pretty much concludes my overview of the website. I hope this has been useful. I hope that you've picked up a few tips. The final thing I should mention, I forgot to say, I've added a cookie consent bar. This is legally required under an EU directive which was rolled out a couple of years ago. So the Information Commissioner's Office, the ICO in the UK, have decreed that all websites need to disclose if they're using cookies, which you are because you're using Google Analytics. So that automatically puts you in the camp of somebody who's using cookies. So if they were to click find out more, it goes to the privacy policy page, and this is a free plugin. It's a very good plugin. I've done a lot of research and I chose this one. I've used it myself on many websites. You can find the plugin, you can find it, it's called UK Cookie Consent. Cookie Consent, there it is. So you've got a dashboard for cookie consent. I think it's under, is it tools? It's under settings, cookie consent. Here you go. And you've got content and you've got styles. So that concludes the video, and I'm here to answer any additional questions, and this website will be going online in the next few days. And we'll get WordFence registered to your email address, and we'll get Cloudflare set up as well. Thanks for watching. Bye.